There's no immediate retirement in my future. I told him in March I was playing, and I've never quit on anything in my life.
So when is it time to call it quits? Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick Davenport here, aka Mr. Mental Muscle, with another episode on the Mental Breakdown channel. And today we're going to talk about Tom Brady. Now, we all know he's going through a divorce right now, and I don't want to get too deep into actual relationship issues. I want to talk more so about the psychology and science, as we always do. Now, we're going to talk about two different sides of this: athletic identity, as well as his performance issues on the field. Now, as always, we're going to break this down using science and psychology. So with that being said, let's break it down. Now, when it comes to athletic identity, I talk about this all the time on the channel. It's basically how one identifies as an athlete. This is the skill sets, the mindset, and the traits that make you perform at a higher level. Now, all athletes who want to be great need to score very high on these traits. But the thing is, if you go too high, it could be detrimental to your actual day-to-day life and your social situations. Now, in this case, people might argue, why is Tom Brady still going? He's been playing for 2 decades. He's exceeded the average NFL career of 3.3 years, or 4.4 for quarterbacks, by far. So you're like, what else does he have to prove? And even his wife might agree with that.
I think the thing is, Skip, is that Tom had made some assurances to her. If this, and this happen, this is what I'm willing to do.
Okay, I got that. But I've said from the start, if you push Tom Brady to the brink and you say, me or football, he's going to choose football if he thinks he still has at least a year left in football.
Yeah, and she said, well, since you chose that, ultimatum, you told me what was important to you. Clearly, your family is not important, and she left.
It's not that they're not important, it's just that
they weren't more important than football.
Now, I'm not gonna get too much into relationship issues, but when you think about it, when do you really call it quits? Now, if I give my personal take on this, I say you retire out when you die out. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to go until you can't go anymore, but if you still have some kick in you, some dog in you, keep fighting, right? And with him, granted, his season's off to a rough start. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are 3-5, and he's having some of the worst stats right now. But let's not forget, just 2 years ago, he won the Super Bowl, and last year he went to the playoffs above the age of 40. Not too many people have done this in any position, let alone a quarterback. So we can argue that he still has the ability to play. So I don't really think you should throw out the baby with the bathwater and say he's too old. Now, on the other side, from the social standpoint, we're talking about athletic identity. You do need to have some kind of outlets. You have to be able to do things outside of your given sport, in this case, football for Tom. Now, the thing is, he's a competitor. If you know his history, he was the last quarterback chosen in his draft class, and none of those guys really lived up to be anything other than Chad Pennington, who had a pretty decent career on and off. But for the most part, no one really measured up to what Tom has done. And crazy enough, none of them are still playing. Obviously, it's been 20 plus years. But the thing is, does he stop now? Is the old classic saying, go out on top, relevant here? People bring up comparisons to Jordan, but let's not forget, Jordan actually came back in his late 30s, which is still pretty old considered elite level athlete standards, and still did pretty well. Now, he didn't average the numbers he did in the late 80s and the 90s when he had his championship runs, so you can argue he still was playing. And the same thing with Tom Brady. Now, they say an athlete dies twice. You got to get ready for that first funeral, which is your athletic career. Now, granted, Tom has proven himself, 7 Super Bowl championships. He can walk away right now and nothing to worry about. But the thing is, maybe that dog in him still wants to fight. Now, you can argue, does this make detriment to his family life, his kids, his wife? It could. Now, going through divorce, that's hard to deal with. And this kind of segues into my next point on his performance issues. Now, you can see Skip and Shannon talking about these issues on his performance and bringing up the divorce and talking about focus. So let's look at that.
Brady's playing awful. Through 8 games, he's posted career low in points, 18. Brady has 9 touchdowns. 6 have come when the Bucs were behind. 4 have come from the Bucs were behind in the fourth quarter, and 1 came last night with 49 seconds. He's just sitting on the sideline like, man, and all the while, he's dealing with that. That's a lot. A lot of people deal with that, and Skip, look, I understand people have normal jobs and they go to work, but this is a special type of job. The focus has to be there. And I don't know if the focus was there like it should have been because he was dealing with what he was dealing with. So I understand. Now it makes perfect sense to why Tom Brady didn't seem like he seemed so on edge.
Now, as you can see, they emphasize the parts of his social life, the marriage, the divorce. his kids, his performance on the field. So just bringing together the athletic identity as well as his on-field performance. But from a mental standpoint, how your brain actually processes, we can look into this here. Now, in general, studies have shown that people going through divorce can suffer from depression and anxiety. Now, these are just issues that a person goes through in general. Now, if we come back to the athletic identity part of it, you're going through that as a person, but he's also going through it as an athlete. So his on-field issues, performance, lack thereof, is going to affect him. And Tom is a competitor. He lives for this. He's a go-getter. So this is going to affect him hard. He's high on the athletic identity scale. Now, as a person, he loves his family. I'm sure he loves his wife. But this is not something easy, and the average person goes through this. It's hard to deal with. So imagine living in those both realms of real life and football life, which coincide and differ, and you have to process both of those. So just emotionally, that's a lot. And we talk about depression and anxiety, this actually uses mental capacity. So when he's going through this, when he's thinking up and calling plays, reading defenses, that takes effort. He has to be mentally there. And a lot of people say, you gotta focus. But what does that really mean? I talk about this as well. Working memory, actual cognitive load. This is how we take in information in real time, process it, make sense of what's going on, and utilize what we already know to apply it to that given situation. Being good at this skill, working memory, is a trait that the most elite athletes excel at. But when you have more things going on that are irrelevant to the task, people talk about choking all the time. Choking is not just some random occurrence. It typically happens when you're overthinking certain tasks or underthinking them. Or in this case, it could be both. He could be underthinking what's going on in real time because his mind's clouded. And you saw Shannon trying to argue maybe he shouldn't be on that every single play, but you can't really dispute what someone's going through because only they can see it in their mind. So the thing is, when he's trying to focus on the plays at hand, maybe that load is too high. You got to be able to be in the moment. People talk about awareness and focus, but this is really just your brain taking information in real time and making sense of what to do with it. Now, granted, his 20+ year career, he's able to make these decisions. He's seen so much. He knows these plays. He knows these situations, these schemes. You only can see so many defenses, right? But it can break down easily because his focus is not there. So when you think about it from that standpoint, I'm not saying give him a pass in performance, but that's a lot to take in. And now obviously people go through things all the time. So it's not excusing his play or performance. You just got to understand where it's coming from. And that's my job. I want to break it down. So think about that. Now, when it comes down to it, I wish Tom the best. I'm actually a big Brady fan, not necessarily his teams he plays for, but his story is amazing. He overcame being slept on in the NFL draft to becoming one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, greatest athletes of all time. You can argue that, and I think so. So take that in consideration. Now, whatever happens from the family standpoint, I just hope he's able to handle it. And whenever he does decide to retire, he does it on his terms, and the world can accept that. So thanks guys for tuning in as always. This is a great topic, I think, because it shows light to a high-level athlete, especially one like Tom Brady, outside the sport realm, and how even the greatest can suffer from different things from a mental health standpoint and just mental performance in general. So thanks as always for tuning in, guys, and get your mind right.